Look, I know how this sounds. I know what you're already thinking before I even start. But hear me out, because what happened to me back in 2010 changed everything I thought I knew about the woods behind my house. I've lived on the edge of this forest my whole life. 3 generations of my family hunted these mountains, and I grew up tagging along with the old man on deer and bear hunts before I was big enough to hold a rifle steady. By the time I hit 30, I'd hunted just about every animal you could imagine out there. The walls of my cabin tell that story clear enough. Some trophies were the kind you brag about over a beer at the bar. Others, well, let's just say the game wardens wouldn't have been too thrilled if they'd come sniffing around. But there was always something missing, a prize I never thought I'd get a shot at. Growing up around here, you heard the stories. Every kid did. Old-timers swapping tales at the general store about something huge moving through the treetops at night. Campers came back talking about screams in the dark that didn't sound like any animal they knew. Loggers found tracks that made a grown man's boots look like a child's. Most folks chalked it up to bears rearing on their hind legs or maybe too much whiskey around the fire. But I always wondered. Wonder turned to hope. Hope turned into obsession. The problem with hunting is, once you've caught everything you can, you start looking for the things you can't. That's how I justified it to myself. Looking back now, I see how foolish and selfish that was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In early spring of 2010, I bought a set of motion-triggered trail cams. Told my wife I was worried about predators coming too close to the property bears, maybe a mountain lion. And that wasn't a total lie. We'd had a few dogs go missing around the area, and folks were nervous. But truthfully, I was hoping for something else entirely. I set up 6 cameras spread across about 5 square miles of the thickest woods behind my land. I placed them on game trails near water sources anywhere I figured something big might pass through. Checked them every few days, pulled the SD cards, dumped the footage onto my computer, and combed through every frame. For months, it was exactly what you'd expect. Deer at dawn, raccoons at night, a sow black bear with cubs late in May, coyotes, turkeys, even caught a bobcat once, which was pretty neat but nothing unusual. Nothing that made me sit up straight and lean toward the screen. I started thinking maybe the old stories really were just campfire talk, that I'd been chasing shadows and legends, wasting time and money on cameras that only showed me what I already knew lived out there. Then September came. I remember the exact day, the 17th of September 2010. I pulled the card from the northeast cam, the one I'd mounted near a creek about 2 miles into the timber. Brought it home, fixed myself dinner, and settled into the usual routine, fast-forwarding through hours of nothing. At first, I almost missed it. Timestamp 3:47 on M. The camera's infrared kicked on, painting the forest floor in that strange gray-green glow. Something moved. I paused, rewound, hit play again. A deer stood in the frame, a young one, maybe 80 pounds, drinking from the creek, completely unaware. And then, from the left side of the frame, something else stepped in. My first thought was bear. But bears don't move like that. This thing walked upright, fully upright, smooth as a man, except it was massive. Easily 8 feet tall, shoulders wide as a doorframe, arms swinging down past the knees. Its whole body was covered in thick, dark hair that almost shimmered in the IR light. I watched it close in on the deer. The deer finally sensed something and bolted, but too late. The creature moved with a speed that made no sense for something that size. 1 second it was 10 feet back, the next it had closed the gap and wrapped both arms around the deer. It was over in seconds. The deer kicked and thrashed, but the thing was unbelievably strong. Strong in a way that didn't seem possible. It carried the deer almost casually, like you or I would carry a house cat. Then it turned, and for a single instant its face resolved in the infrared glow. A conical head, a pronounced brow ridge, a flat nose, eyes that reflected the camera's light with a strange, empty gleam. Then it stepped out of frame, holding the deer as if it weighed nothing at all. I sat there staring at the screen for who knows how long. My heart hammered. My hands shook. I must have watched that clip 50 times that night, searching for any sign it was fake, any sign that I was seeing something other than what it appeared to be, but there was no denying it. I'd caught one. Or at least I'd caught it on camera. The sensible thing would have been to call someone, get the university to look at the footage, or at least tell a friend. I didn't. because the moment I finished watching, all I could think about was mounting its head on my wall, the one trophy no one else could claim, becoming the one who actually did it. Looking back, I hate that version of myself. I really do. But that was the truth. The next morning, I went back to check the cameras, and sure enough, there was more. This footage was from the same night, about 2 hours after the first clip, and 4:52 a.m. By then, the creature had returned, but this time it wasn't hunting. It just stood there, about 15 feet from the camera, perfectly still, staring straight into the lens. That wasn't coincidence. This wasn't an animal that happened to trip a motion sensor. This was deliberate. It knew the camera was there and wanted to be seen. The clip runs nearly 3 minutes. Just a huge, fur-covered silhouette standing motionless, its eyes reflecting the camera light like 2 coins. Then it slowly turned, walked off, and vanished into the dark. The second clip should have terrified me. It should have made me rethink everything. Instead, it hardened my resolve, because if it knew about the camera, that meant it was smart. Really smart. And that made it an even greater prize. God, I was an idiot. I decided right then. I was going back that night to try to follow its tracks. The trick was keeping it secret. Hunting something like that would almost certainly be illegal. Hell, it might not even be safe. Worse, if word got out that I'd seen one, people would pour into these woods, tourists with cameras, cryptid hunters, maybe even federal agents if anyone took it seriously. Then my chance would be gone. So I told no one. Not my wife, not my hunting buddies, no one. I went about my day as usual while planning how I'd approach it. I've spent my life in these woods. I know them better than most people know their own backyards. The area where the cam caught the footage is rough blowdowns, thick underbrush, lots of uneven ground. But it was doable. If you knew where to look, you could see a path. And of course, I'd bring a rifle. A good one, not the old 30-06 I use for deer. This was a 338 Winchester Magnum, enough stopping power for anything that moves on this continent. The plan was simple. Get to the area before dark, pick a good vantage with a clear line of sight, and wait. If it showed, I'd shoot. Clean, quick, as humane as I could make it. Then I'd field dress it on site, somehow get it to my truck, and deal with the rest later. I told my wife I was going out for an overnight hunt. She didn't ask questions after 20 years together. She's used to me disappearing into the woods for days at a time. On September 19, I left around 4 p.m., giving myself enough time to get in position before sundown. I took the rifle, a good knife, some rope, water, and nothing else. I wanted to travel light. The hike in took about an hour and a half. I knew exactly where I was headed. I found the spot where I'd mounted the camera and set up about 40 yards upwind, with a clear view of the creek and the surrounding area. Then I waited. If you've never hunted, you don't know what that kind of waiting feels like. It's not like sitting on the couch watching TV. You have to be absolutely still, absolutely silent, every sense on high alert, listening for twigs snapping, watching for movement at the edge of your vision, controlling your breath so the vapor doesn't give you away in the cold air. Hours passed. The sun went down. The temperature dropped hard. My legs cramped from staying frozen in place. And I started to wonder if it was too smart for this. If showing itself on camera had been a way to let me know it knew I was looking and that it didn't intend to be caught. Then, around 11 p.m., I heard something. Not too close, maybe 100 yards to my left. Something big moving through the brush. I turned my head slowly, trying to fix the direction. The sound stopped, started again, closer, stopped. It was moving in a pattern, circling as if checking the area before stepping out. My heart sped up. I eased my rifle into position, finger resting outside the trigger guard, safety still on, waiting, and then I saw it. It pushed out of the brush about 60 yards away. Even in the dark, with only moonlight filtering through the trees, I knew it was the same one from the footage. Same size, same shape, same almost human gait. It moved to the creek, crouched down, scooped water in its hands, and drank. The whole time its head kept turning, scanning the woods, listening, watching. I had a shot. Not a great one, but a decent one. Center mass, maybe a little off, but I held back. Something told me to wait. Maybe it was hunter's instinct, maybe just curiosity, but I wanted to see more. It finished drinking, stood, and began walking along the creek, parallel to my position. That's when I made my first mistake. I shifted to follow it, and my boot scraped a rock. The creature froze, head snapping toward where I was hidden. We stayed like that for what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds. I didn't breathe. It didn't move. Just stared like it could see straight through the dark, the brush, the trees, right to where I crouched. Then it did something I didn't expect. It started moving again, but not away. It was going deeper into the woods, and from my angle I could see it wasn't running. It was walking, slow, almost like it wanted me to follow. I waited a minute, then started moving as quietly as I could. It was dangerous, and I knew it. Following something into the dark when you don't know what it's capable of is exactly how people get hurt. But I'd come this far. I wasn't turning back now. Mostly I followed it by sound. Every few minutes I'd hear branches shift or leaves crunch, always about 50 yards ahead. Never far enough to lose it completely, never close enough to get a clear look. After about 20 minutes, I came to a small clearing. I stopped to catch my breath and get my bearings. That's when I noticed the trees. Long, deep gouges ran down the bark. Fresh enough the sap was still sticky. I stepped closer, reached up to touch one. They were high, higher than I could reach, even on tiptoe. And they weren't made by anything small. Whatever left them had claws or talons strong enough to tear into living wood. A territorial marker, like a bear rubbing a tree or a big cat sharpening its claws. Only the scale was all wrong. The mark started at 8 feet up and slashed down to chest height. But that wasn't all. As I scanned the clearing, I started noticing other things. Strange things that made the hair on my neck stand up. Objects hung from low branches. At first I thought they were just debris snagged in the trees. But when I got closer, I realized they'd been placed there deliberately, almost woven together. One was made from deer antlers, small ones, probably from a young buck. They'd been lashed together with what looked like strips of bark, forming a crude cross. It hung from a branch at eye level, swaying slowly in the night breeze. Another was a collection of bird skulls, 7 or 8 of them, all clean and bone-white, strung together on a vine and draped over a limb. They clicked softly against each other when the wind moved, like a wind chime made of bone. And there was more. Pine cones stacked into careful pyramids on flat rocks. A circle of white stones, each about the size of my fist, laid out in a perfect ring around the base of a massive oak. And at the center of that circle, a mound of feathers, hundreds of them, all different sizes and colors, arranged in a pattern I couldn't begin to understand. This wasn't random. This wasn't an animal hoarding shiny things or building a nest. This was intentional, deliberate, something closer to decoration or an offering. I stood there, trying to process what I was seeing. In all my years hunting these woods, I'd never come across anything like it, and the placement was too deliberate to be mindless. These things meant something, I just didn't know what. That should have been my warning. It should have told me I was dealing with something far more complex than I'd imagined. But I was too locked in on the hunt to listen to my own instincts. I heard movement again and crouched low, moving as quietly as I could toward the sound. The creature was about 40 yards away now, in another small opening between the trees. What I saw next was almost impossible to believe. It was kneeling on the ground, or as close to kneeling as its body shape allowed. Its long arms were spread wide, palms turned upward, head tilted back toward the sky through the canopy above. It held that pose for about 30 seconds, completely still, completely silent. Then it bowed its head and began to make a sound. Not a growl or howl like you'd expect from an animal. This was something else entirely: low, resonant tones, rhythmic, almost melodic, rising from deep within its chest in a repeating pattern. This wasn't random noise. It was structured, deliberate, like chanting. The sound went on for several minutes. Sometimes it paused, silent for a moment, then began again, each time slightly different, but still with a consistent, ritual rhythm. I watched through my scope, not even thinking about shooting anymore, just trying to comprehend what I was seeing. This thing was performing some kind of ritual, maybe prayer, maybe meditation, maybe something I don't even have words for. When the sound stopped, it bent down and picked something up from the ground in front of it. I couldn't make it out in the dark, but it looked like feathers. It raised them to the sky, held them there a moment, then carefully placed them back down. Then it stood, turned, and began walking deeper into the forest. I followed, but something had shifted in my mind. I'd come into this thinking I was tracking an animal, a rare, intelligent, oversized animal, sure, but still, just a beast at the end of the day. What I was witnessing now was something else entirely. This being had culture, tradition, maybe even belief. It made art, if that's what the signs were. It performed rituals that hinted at some kind of spiritual awareness. And that's when the full weight of what I'd been planning hit me. I wasn't just hunting an animal. I was hunting something closer to human than I wanted to admit. And even then, even recognizing that I didn't turn back. The selfish part of me, the part that wanted the trophy more than anything, shoved those thoughts aside and told itself that whatever it was, I'd come too far to quit. Looking back, I can't believe how twisted my thinking had become, how I justified it to myself. But that's the truth. I kept going. The creature led me into places I'd never been before. Deeper into the old-growth forest where the trees grew so dense they blocked out almost all the moonlight. From time to time, I'd see more signs, more antlers lashed together, more stones and bones arranged. At one point, I passed a tree marked with symbols, not random gouges, but shapes, circles, and lines carved into patterns I couldn't interpret, but which clearly had meaning. How long had these things been out here? How many were there? And how had they stayed hidden so long while building a culture right under our noses? The anthropologist in me, the one I'd buried decades ago, started to wake up. It was hard to believe. This was proof of a species we'd never known about, with behavioral complexity on par with our ancestors, maybe even on par with us. But the predator in me still held the reins, still locked onto the target, still saw it as a prize to be won, instead of a discovery to be protected. Then I heard it again. This time off to my right footsteps, leaves shifting. I turned toward the sound, squinting into the dark. That's when I saw it moving between the trees. Not walking, not exactly, almost playing. It grabbed a fallen branch as thick as my forearm, swung it like a club, testing the weight, feeling it. Then it stepped back and hurled it. I swear it went 60, maybe 70 feet before crashing into the undergrowth. It did it again and again. Each throw was aimed at a different target, a tree trunk, a limb. And each time it stopped afterward, as if gauging accuracy, learning, improving. This wasn't play. This was training. It was practicing. I'd read enough anthropology texts in college to know what that meant. Tool use in animals isn't rare. Chimps use sticks to fish termites out of mounds. Crows drop nuts on roads to crack them open. But this was different. This was weaponization. The deliberate use of an object as a projectile, refining precision and power. That's how humans became apex predators. Not claws, not venom, not brute strength. We threw things, spears, rocks, anything within reach. Shoulder structure, hand-eye coordination, a brain that could calculate force and trajectory, that's what set us apart from everything else. And this thing was doing the same, which meant it wasn't just smart, it was strategic. It was preparing for something, conflict, hunting, defense, which made what I was about to do not only worse, but far more dangerous. I wish that realization had stopped me. I wish it had made me lower my rifle and go home, but it didn't. If anything, it made me want it more because something so human-like, so intelligent, mounted on my wall would be the ultimate trophy, proof I'd conquered something nearly our equal. I'm not proud of that thought, not at all. But I have to admit it because that's who I was that night. I kept following. The creature led me deeper into the forest, across terrain I didn't recognize. We were far off any trail now, moving into old-growth woods that probably hadn't seen a human in decades. Eventually, we reached another clearing, larger than the first, maybe 50 feet across, perfectly round, ringed with towering pines at least a century old. The creature walked to the center of the clearing and stopped, its back to me, completely still. This was it. This was my shot. Clear line of sight, good distance, solid rest if I leaned against the tree next to me. My hand slid to the safety, clicked it off. I raised the rifle, found the scope, centered the crosshairs between its shoulder blades. Inhale, exhale, begin to squeeze the trigger. And something hit me from behind like a freight train. 1 second I was sighting in, the next I was face down in the dirt. Wind knocked out of me, head ringing like a church bell. Something massive was on top of me. I felt hands, huge hands, wrench my arms back. My rifle went flying into the leaves. I struggled, tried to get up, but whatever had me was impossibly strong. It was like trying to fight a bear. I twisted my head just enough to see it. Another one, bigger than the first, darker fur, even more massive through the shoulders. It had come up behind me while I was focused on the one in the clearing. I was trapped. They'd coordinated, driven me right where they wanted me. The second creature grabbed the back of my neck and slammed me into the ground. Not hard enough to kill, but hard enough that everything went black for a second. When my vision cleared, all I could see were stars and darkness. I felt myself being dragged, tried to stay conscious, tried to see where they were taking me, but I kept fading in and out. The first thing I became aware of was pain, my shoulder screaming like it was being torn from the socket as something hauled me across the forest floor. My shirt had ridden up. I could feel every rock, every root, every broken branch scraping my skin. I forced my eyes open. Everything was tilted and blurry. I could see the ground rushing past, my arms stretched out in front of me, massive hands locked tight around my wrists. The pull was unbelievable, like being dragged by steel cables. Then it all went black again. When I came to the second time, I was still being dragged. I could hear breathing above me, deep, powerful breaths, and that smell again. Earth, pine, and something else, something wild. I tried to move my legs, tried to dig in against the ground, but my body wouldn't respond the way I wanted. My head was spinning. Everything hurt. That's when I heard them talking. I don't even know what to call it. It wasn't English. It wasn't human. But it wasn't just animal noises either. These sounds had structure, rhythm, back and forth, communication. The one dragging me let out a series of deep, rumbling growls, so low they seemed to vibrate out of its chest. Another voice answered from somewhere to my left, higher pitched, faster. The sounds overlapped, interlaced. There was urgency in them. Then a third voice joined in. This one was different, slower, measured. A long, sighing moan, followed by a series of clicks and short barks. They were arguing. I couldn't understand a word, but the tone was unmistakable. They were disagreeing about something about me, probably, about what to do with me. The dragging stopped. I dropped to the ground, pain lancing up my spine as I struck something hard, maybe a rock. I tried to roll, to see what was happening, but my vision swam. Through blurred eyes, I could make out their shapes. 3 of them, standing in a loose circle around me. The big one, the one that had slammed me down, stood at the center. The one I'd been tracking was off to its left. And a third, slightly smaller but still massive, was on the right. The argument kept going. The big one barked sharply, gesturing toward me with one long arm. Not quite pointing, but close. Aggressive, threatening. The smaller one shot back with a flurry of high-pitched calls, almost questioning. It moved closer to me, crouched down, stared into my face. I could see its eyes catch the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. There was something in them, curiosity, maybe, or assessment. Then the one I'd been following stepped forward. It made a sound I hadn't heard before. A long, rolling tone, low and resonant like waves on a shore. The other 2 froze, turned to look at it. It spoke again, same tone, same cadence, but shorter, sharper, more deliberate. The big one didn't like that. It rumbled out a deep growl and advanced on the one from the clearing. Now they were only a few feet apart, and even in my half-conscious haze, I could feel the tension like a current in the air. What happened next was like watching 2 silverbacks square off. The big one straightened to its full height, easily 9 feet, shoulders impossibly wide. It pounded its chest once, twice, the sound rolling through the forest like a war drum. The one from the clearing didn't back down. It stood tall, mirroring the stance, displaying its own strength. Not as aggressive, but unwavering, holding its ground. They locked eyes. Seconds stretched into eternity. The smaller one backed away, nervous, watching. The tension was a blade in the air. Then the big one growled again and swung not at the other creature, but at a nearby tree. Its massive hand struck the trunk with such force I heard the wood crack. The tree shuddered, leaves raining down. A show of dominance. A demonstration of power. A way of saying, asterisk. This is what I can do to you. Asterisk. And the one from the clearing didn't move. It just stood there, waiting. For a moment, I thought they were going to fight. A real fight. And I was lying helpless between them. But then the smaller one let out a call, soft, almost pleading. It moved between the two, not touching either, but positioning itself like a barrier. It called again, and this time both of them turned to look. Whatever it said seemed to work. The big one snorted, an unmistakably irritated sound, then stepped back. It turned away, walked a few paces, then turned back again. It let out another series of calls, quieter now, less hostile. The one from the clearing responded, still calm, still measured. The exchange went on for maybe a minute, back and forth, until the tension slowly began to fade. At last, the huge creature gave a final call, half growl, half sigh, then gestured toward me. This time, it wasn't threatening, more like resignation. The one from the clearing nodded. Actually nodded, the way a human would. Then it bent down, grabbed my arm, and dragged me once again. Darkness swallowed me. The time that followed exists only in fragments in my memory. I drifted in and out of consciousness, catching flashes, then slipping away again. Once, I remember seeing the sky stars shimmering faintly through the trees. The moon was lower, meaning hours had passed. Or maybe it was a different night entirely. I couldn't tell. I heard water somewhere nearby, a stream or creek, and felt something cold against my face. One of them was washing the blood away. The sensation was almost gentle. More calls, softer now. The argument seemed to be over. Their voices had shifted, calmer, even cooperative. A hand pressed against my shoulder, my legs lifted. I was being carried, not dragged. The movement was smoother, careful. At one point I realized we were descending. I could feel the slope, gravity pulling me forward. The trees here were different, smaller, closer together. We were leaving the deep forest behind. A distant sound reached me, faint at first. It took a moment before I recognized it, a vehicle on pavement. We were near a road. That's when reality began to settle in. They were bringing me back. Back to where I started, back to civilization. But why? After what I had tried to do, why not leave me out there, or worse? I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't have the strength to wonder. Darkness took me again. When I woke for real, I was on my back, staring at the sky. I don't know how long I'd been out. Minutes, maybe hours. My head throbbed like a hammer blow. My arms ached. My mouth tasted of blood. I forced myself upright, and that's when I realized I was at the forest's edge. I could see the road, maybe 200 yards away, the very road where I had parked my truck. How I'd gotten back, I had no idea. The last thing I remembered was being miles deep in the woods. Something lay beside me. I turned my head slowly and saw my trail cameras. All 6 of them, ripped from their mounts and piled together at my side. Some smashed beyond recognition. Others still intact, just caked with dirt and scratches. They had gathered them, knowing what they were, knowing I had placed them there and returned them to me. My rifle was gone. My knife, too. Just me, my cameras, and the forest's edge. That's when I heard them. I looked up and saw them there. 5 of them, standing in a half circle about 15 feet away, just inside the shadow of the trees. The one I had been tracking stood at the center. The massive one that had ambushed me was on its right. 3 others I had never seen before completed the arc, each of them huge, each watching me with dark, light-catching eyes. A few of them made sounds not quite growls, but a low, chest-deep rumble. Their body language needed no translation. They were angry, truly angry. I tried to push myself away, but my body wouldn't obey. Everything hurt, so I just lay there, waiting for what I knew was coming. The one from the clearing stepped forward. The other stayed back, still rumbling, still staring. It came close enough that I could smell it. Not the stench you'd expect, not like a zoo or anything like that. More like earth, rain, the forest itself. It stared down at me for a long moment. I stared back, because what else could I do? I couldn't run, couldn't fight. All I could do was face whatever was about to happen. And then it spoke. One word, clear as daylight. Just asterisk, asterisk, no, asterisk, asterisk. It pointed at me, then at itself, then back at me. No. Then it pointed at the forest behind. The same gesture, the same word. No. It held my gaze for a few seconds more and I understood. I understood completely. It was telling me I couldn't hunt it, couldn't hunt them, and it was telling me to stay away from their forest. A warning. That was all. Just a warning. Then it turned and walked into the trees. The others followed, though a few kept glancing back, low rumbles still rolling from their chests. In less than a minute, they were gone completely, as if they'd never been there at all. I lay there for what must have been an hour before I could even stand. When I finally got to my feet, I gathered what was left of my cameras and started walking back to the truck. Every step was agony. I'm pretty sure I'd broken 1 or 2 ribs. There was a lump the size of a golf ball on the back of my head, bruises everywhere. But I was alive. I was alive. They could have killed me easily. The big one could have crushed my skull when it knocked me down, could have snapped my neck as it dragged me through the forest. But instead, they only knocked me out, brought me back, warned me, and let me go. I reached the truck just as the sun was rising. There's no describing what it feels like to move with shattered ribs. Every step was hell. Still, I managed to climb into the cab and drive home. Threw the broken cameras into the trash and drove on. When I got home, my wife nearly lost her mind when she saw me. You know how women scream when you've done something stupid? Well, this was 10 times worse. I don't think I've been yelled at like that since I was a kid. I told my wife I'd slipped on wet rocks and fallen. She drove me straight to the hospital. I didn't say anything else. I just took a couple of painkillers and passed out while she drove. They kept me there for a week before I demanded to be discharged. A few days later, when I could move without wanting to scream, I went through the cameras that had survived. 2 of them still worked, and their SD cards were readable. There was a lot of footage, mostly normal stuff, deer and small animals, but there were also standout clips. Me walking past the camera, then stopping and staring at it for minutes at a time. They knew. They'd known all along that I was watching. Maybe they were the ones who lured me in and hunted me. I can't make sense of their behavior. If they were smart enough to know where the cameras were, why let themselves be filmed at all? I don't understand. I'd thrown away the cameras that survived their attacks, but kept the newest footage. I've since changed my mind. I don't want any trophies in my living room anymore. I've even thought about deleting the first photos I ever took, the photos that sent me into the woods in the first place. But I still hold on to them, a reminder of my own stupidity, but I never set another camera in the forest again. I know that's their home. I wouldn't want someone putting cameras in my home either, so I give them that courtesy. That happened 14 years ago. I still live in the same place, on the edge of that forest, but I don't hunt there anymore. In fact, I don't really hunt at all these days. I cleared out all the trophies from my cabin, donated, or threw them away. I don't see them the same way now. They're no longer accomplishments, just things I killed to prove I could. Sometimes at night, I hear sounds in the forest behind my house, trees falling when they shouldn't, calls unlike any animal I know, and I wonder if they're still out there, watching, making sure I keep my promise. I think a lot about that night, about what would have happened if they'd decided I wasn't worth warning. If they had just ended it right there in that clearing, no one would ever know what had really happened to me. I'd just be another hunter who went into the woods and never came back. But they didn't. They chose to let me live. They chose to teach me a lesson instead of making me pay for my stupidity. I've never told this story before. My wife still thinks I slipped on rocks. My friends think I lost interest in hunting because I got old. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe some things are meant to stay in the woods where they happened. But I need to write this down. Need to admit what I almost did and what stopped me. Not to warn others, anyone with half a brain knows better than to chase something like that, but to remind myself of the worst mistake I almost made. They're out there. I know they're out there. And they're smarter than we think. Smart enough to avoid us when they want. Smart enough to defend themselves when they must. Smart enough to show mercy when we don't deserve it. I got lucky. I got a second chance I didn't deserve. And I'm not stupid enough to waste it. Those forests belong to them. They always have. And I'm fine with leaving it that way.